Order, it's 9 o'clock. Let's start with the roll call, please.
Directors Osborne, Veerkamp, and Zini, Dwyer, and Day present. General Manager Abercrombie. Clerk to the Board Sullivan present. Acting General Counsel Leeper and General Counsel Polson is absent.
All right, we will stand and pledge allegiance. Please start it off. Director Osborne?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, we're going to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to adopt the agenda by Director Day and Director Dwyer, seconded. All those in favor? No? I mean, we need public, I'm sorry, any members from the public wish to speak on this item on our agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. It does not appear that we have any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay,
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
all right, we'll move on to communications.
Good morning. I have one recognition that Daniel Newsome is going to present. It's an EID employee receiving the H.R. LaBounty Safety Award. Daniel?
Thanks everybody for having me. So the recipient of this award is Chris Soleil. He's actually sitting right back here next to John Shavers. So thanks for showing up today, Chris. So the cool thing about this award is when an employee is recognized, the award's actually shown with all of the other water agencies across the state. So not only are we getting better at EID, but what Chris has done to make this improvement, it gets shown with everyone. So as you know, 100% safety is one of the district's guiding principles. And thank you, board, for being so, safety conscious too. It's awesome to have a board that's so interested in safety. Mr. Soleil, he works in collections. He's been a senior construction maintenance worker for 8 years now. So what Mr. Soleil noticed was that staff was having a difficult time entering the beds of crew trucks. I think we have a slide here to show it. As you can see here, there's not really a good place to step onto this crew truck here. It was hard to get loads in and out of the truck bed there. The step up to the bumper was high, which could have led to a manual handling injury or a slip, trip, fall injury. So after Chris identified the hazard, he had a step receiver hitch inserted into the tow hitch receiver of the crew truck. There's the step right there. So the step allowed staff to take a small step onto the step receiver hitch and then enter the bed of the truck while maintaining 3 points of contact. So you can see here the step's low enough to reach, large enough to step on, and the surface of the step has grip tape. Okay. And just to remind everyone, industrial ergonomics was the special emphasis program at EID in 2021. We talked about it at the safety committee and really encouraged our staff to go find ways to try and improve our industrial ergonomics program. This is a great example here. You can see in the photo that they're actually able to step onto that step onto the bumper, and then maintain 3 points of contact entering the bed of that truck. So this is a great example of properly identifying, reporting, and implementing a hazard to comply with the district's injury, illness, and prevention program, and keeping 100% safety of the operational forefront. So on behalf of the management team, general manager, and board of directors, it's our privilege again to acknowledge Mr. Soleil for his contribution to improve workplace safety and being a recipient of the Aqua JPI HR LaBounty Safety Award.
I think we should take up a collection and buy George one of those steps for his truck to help him get it.
Well, you know, it's just this one small step, so to speak, that could save injury or twisted ankle or something. So every small step helps us in safety.
Oh, wait, Jim, weren't you gonna give him a month off?
No.
He's
but-
gone
But he
now.
already got the check.
No, congratulations to Chris Soul for coming up with that idea. And, you know, safety is an important part of the type of work we do, and I'm happy that managers and employees are participating. That kind of quality brings out these good ideas, and it saves us a lot of money in work injury costs. So thank you again for bringing it forward. I appreciate it, and congratulations to Chris Soul. All right. Now we will move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to speak to the board on anything that is not on the agenda. So, Board Clerk, do we have anybody online, or is anybody here in the office in this room who wants to speak first?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any time, at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. It does not appear at this time there are any members of the public wishing to speak at this time.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to the communications part of our agenda. General Manager.
Nothing today.
All right. Clerk.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Board of Directors, anything to report? George?
I had the opportunity last Monday, a week ago, to attend by request the meeting of CDAP, which is the Community Economic Development Group in Pollock Pines, and they wanted a little report on what was going on at EID. I was supposed to speak for 10 minutes and ended up 45. And they kept asking all kinds of questions. But I did report on all of our projects. The flume came in under budget. That was astounding to them that, you know, that a government operation that it came in that kind of money under budget. The Four Bay Reservoir project is 99.9% complete, and everybody loves it. And it really has really improved that arena. I told them about the main ditch being piped, and we saved somewhere between 1,300 and 1,800 acre feet of water a year. And if you took just the middle of that at 1,550, that's a 500 million gallons of water a year, and that number astounded them. So anyway, and then not to mention the cost of maintenance and all the other things that will go down substantially because of that pipe and net. I will have to say that I was persona non grata for a few people around there, but
Aren't we all?
but anyway, irrespective of that, I did talk about water supply. Question came up: are you going to sell water? And I kind of dodged around that a little bit, and they said, well, if you can't fill Sly Park, why would you even consider selling water? And
Director Osborne,
Yeah, I know.
because it's on today's agenda.
I understand that. I'm just
Okay,
telling you, I'm reporting on what people ask me.
Okay, report on what people asked you, not what you said.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I did tell them that one of the other little things we've got going is that as soon as the contract is done with the Four Bay Reservoir, there'll be a bridge put across the rocks for people to walk across, and that's adjunct to the new park that's being developed on the land that EID originally owned that we sold to the county for minimal amount of money. And they're developing a huge park up there for kids, and it's going to be quite a deal. They've already got a few $1 million in the bank to get it going. But our lake and our reservoir will be adjunct to that and a walking trail, and everybody was just a happy camper. So that's my report.
Okay. Director Veerkamp?
Yes, we didn't hold, as part of it, the LAFCO monthly meeting, and we approved the annexation of Facilio annexation, which has been going on for quite some time, a well that went dry off of China Hill, I believe East China Hill or West China Hill, I forget just exactly the location. We're also in the public member appointment process, and that'll continue to the next meeting. We held interviews, but we have one more interview to do. There was a glitch in notification. We approved the LAFCO 2021 audit, and we also approved the 22-23 budget and work plan. That's it for LAFCO, unless there's any questions. I'd like,
You're still searching for
public member?
no,
Yes, executive officer. Yes. There's 4, I believe, good candidates, and that interview process is also the next meeting. I forgot about that, yeah. Yeah, so we start early at 4 o'clock with interviews. Yep. Secondary to that, the El Dorado County Fair is this week. First time in 3 years now, so there'll be a lot of good things going on there. One of them being the John M. Studebaker Wheelbarrow Races, 78th annual. Come on out. I'm heading for the water hole, so hopefully in the lead. Anyway, also the Rubicon Challenge will be on Sunday. We moved all of the big rocks and logs and all the stuff to the racetrack area after the races on Saturday night, so everything's gearing up for the fairs. Now, livestock auction also Saturday, 10 a.m. in the pavilion there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Dwyer.
Certainly not as much in demand as George, but I've been invited to speak at the luncheon at Ponte Pomero on June 20th and give an overview of EID. Obviously, they're desperate for speakers.
Yes.
And so,
They got to turn up their hearing aid?
yeah.
All right, nothing for you, Director Day. I have a few things to report. One is the announcement that I'm on the Mountain County Water Board now as a director, and I had my first meeting with the new executive director, who's a part-time position. He went over all of, myself and Lori Parlin met with him. We're both the new directors on that board. And we are promoting, and you will have, or you haven't received it, but the Caldor Fire Tour is being planned by the Mountain County Water District Association, and we have a fairly large agenda that we're planning on, and Wednesday night, June 22nd, will be the reception, and it is at the Holiday Inn Express there in El Dorado Hills near Town Center. That is going to be the reception. Thursday morning will be breakfast there. We have quite a few people who are checking in and going. This is from Sierra Nevada Conservancy. We've got a lot of water companies who are coming in to go on this tour. There's going to be some morning panels. We will have a keynote speaker, Wade Crowfoot, who is secretary to the California National Resources Agency. He will be making, and he's been confirmed that he will be there. There's going to be a discussion on water sustainability in the public and the private sectors. We will go on a tour to Bumpy Meadows and along the way, and of course we have several CAL FIRE experts who will be on this tour. Members on the tour number 2, we're going to do the Mormon Immigrant Trail, and we will have our lunch at the Sly Park Recreation Center. Several of our EID employees are part of the scheduled speakers. Really glad to see that. And then we will end up that night back at the hotel, but in the morning, there'll be another panel discussion on recovery and rebuilding after a fire. Good information, good PR for everyone to understand and share the wealth of what all these different water companies are going through, the ones in the mountain area. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope to see some others there. And one other thing I wanted to report that I did attend the annual safety employee picnic. It was hot, but managers and employees were having fun at the at the barbecue and having a lot of fun and earning, I think it was bingo, wasn't it? It was a bingo that we played with all the answers of water involved with EID. And a lot of employees had a lot of fun doing that, trying to remember there was raffles and a couple of coupons for employees who did well. So it was well done, and I appreciate being able to see managers and employees sharing their knowledge on safety and on issues of all EID. And I got a list printed off from public relations, so that's going to be keynote information, like how many thousands of feet of pipe did we put in last year? You know, simple things like that. So,
Did they have the general manager water dunk that I suggested?
no, they didn't.
No, we didn't want to waste the water.
Good answer.
We could have made maybe some silly putty or some kind of slime. That might have worked, but I doubt it. He's too nice a guy.
Yeah, the employees recommended the board members get slimed.
I'd do it. Yeah, so let it take it on. So anyway, the things we do for dignity. So that ends my report. Let's move on to approve the consent calendar.
Move it. Second.
Move it.
Okay, so it's been motioned by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Veerkamp to approve the consent calendar.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is for any comments on the consent calendar, moved by Director Osborne, second by Director Veerkamp. Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay?
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to information items. Item number 6 is finance. Am I right? Oh, who's that? This is you working on your finance product, your finance report? I mean, this dual purpose there, so you can.
Okay, for the purpose of this meeting, we're going to take a short 5-minute break and restart the meeting just momentarily. Okay, we are back. We apologize. We had a little bit of technical difficulty. So now that we've had the adoption of the consent calendar, we are moving to information item number 6.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Bandy, Finance Director for the district. I'm here this morning to provide a brief update of the district's financial status for the first quarter, that is the period ending March 31st, 2022. Overall, the district is on track for the first quarter in both revenues and expenses. As of March 31st, the district has recorded about $13 million in revenues and just under $12 million in operating expenses. Taking a look at the district's revenues, the current slide shows the revenues by categories and compares the first quarter's recorded revenues to the 3-month adopted budget. For comparison, this slide includes figures for both 2022 and 2021. As the slide illustrates, there are a few categories that do not yet have.
Can we have you hold on for 1 second? Can IT come back to the boardroom because not all the mics are working in here? let's just give it a second.
Okay, let's see. So taking a look at our revenue slide, as you can see, this slide illustrates there's a few categories that do not yet have recorded revenue as of March 31st. There were no hydropower sales during this time due to the major work being done as a result of the losses of the Caldor fire. Property tax revenue was received in the second quarter, therefore it's not reflected on this update. Additionally, the forecasts for the grant revenue as well as the FCC revenue is still on course, and updates will be provided at a future meeting. Next slide. Taking a look at our operating expenses, the current slide shows expenses by category and compares the first quarter's recorded revenues to the 3-month adopted budget. On this side, if you'll note, salaries and benefits are just slightly under the budget at this time due to vacancies within the district, as well as newer employees who are at the beginning of their positions' salary ranges. As other expenses such as repair services or annualized, ongoing updates will be provided at future meetings as well. Next slide. Taking a look at our operating expenses for the first quarter of 2022, comparing them to the same time period in 2021, this slide reflects the district is trending almost identically to year over year with just some slight adjustments within the individual categories. Next slide. Just wanted to highlight a couple items here. The reduction in power revenues due to the Caldor fire loss should be recovered from our business income loss insurance. And then this financial forecast will be updated for the second quarter and presented at a future meeting. The next couple of slides just shows our 5-year financial forecasts. There are no material changes to those at this time, and those reports are in the board packet for your review. So we can just kind of skip through those slides. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. So today's presentation is informational only and requires no board action. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Last year, you weren't here, obviously, but we talked about seasonalizing our forecast. And we tend to take the revenues, you know, the expenses are tracking right on. But the revenue's not, because we flatline our water sales over the quarters, and then we know that the winter water sales are gonna be less, but we don't budget that way.
Okay.
So I propose that we apply a seasonal factor to our forecast, so we don't sit here and try to explain variances when we already know the reason. Is that reasonable to do?
Absolutely. We can take a look at that this budget cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it would be for next year's budget, we'll do the seasonalization. But if you look at the 2 big ticket items, the grant, you know, that'd be hard to forecast exactly when. Hydropower sales, again, was outside the normal forecast, and then property tax. Those are our biggest issues, but certainly we can forecast our water sales and wastewater sales.
Director Veerkamp?
Jamie, thank you very much for the presentation. Jim and Jamie, with the continued inflationary numbers, do we anticipate enough of a contingency to cover fuels, tires, you know, some of the major expenses there as this continues? I don't see, and I think experts are predicting, at least for the, I guess I'll call it short term, but a couple years, it continuing. So obviously we can rebudget for next year, but as we continue through this one, it's looking pretty.
Yeah, I can't remember what Mark put in the inflation index. I think it was 3 or 4%, and certainly at 8%, it will have some,
Right.
6, yeah.
some issues. And next quarter, our next board meeting will do the fuel contract amendment. Maybe we can take a look at that and provide some more information to the board.
I don't believe we've really begun to see the impact, and we will now, I think, moving forward in the next 6 months, probably at least.
I mean, we have enough cash in reserves and things to make up that. And maybe in the second quarter report out, we could really focus in on that.
Thank you.
So I have just one comment that I noted, and of course you mentioned it as the hydropower sales, that we don't have those figures on yet. And the property tax was 0 because we only calculate that in the fall, right?
This report is just capturing anything that we had received by March 31st. We
got
have
it.
received the property
Yeah, this
tax
is-
since then.
This is a normal reporting. But I just wanted to kind of like put some positive spin on it. There's a lot of people selling their homes, which also means increased property taxes coming into the county and coming to us. So, you know, the light side of that is when we have fluctuation in the housing, it's going to make a difference in the end, at the end of the day. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one, which is important also, because that means changeover of customers, changeover of home sales, and changeover of income in our property tax. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7.
Actually, we just want to call for any
yes.
public comment
Sorry.
for information item number 6. President Anzini, at this time, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 6.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 7, operations.
It's working. Good morning.
Morning.
Martin Kozakovic, Drinking Water Operations Manager with District. I'm here this morning to give you update regarding, update information regarding disinfection byproducts management in drinking water system with Dorado Irrigation District. Next slide, please. Summary of the issues. Pretty much we all know what's happened in 2021. Cold War fire burned a large portion of the watersheds that ending on our source water storage reservoirs. Sly Park Lake, Camp Creek watershed was burned down, Park Creek watershed was burned down, South Fork American River watershed was burned down. And just when fire was contained, week after that, we were hit with 2 big storms, end of October and first week of November. These big storms caused enormous debris flows to storage facilities, to Jenkinson Lake, Sly Park Lake, also through South Fork American River down to Folsom. Significant natural organics ended up in the lakes. A lot of nutrients in food that can cause operational issues to treatment facilities. Having that in mind, after the storms, we were closely monitoring what's going on source water storages and what's going on through our treatment facilities and our distribution and transmission system. Next slide, please. This slide is just to visualize. On the left side, we have normal diversion point waterfall, Camp Creek waterfall, where it's water clean, pristine. On the right side, we have a water and debris flows from storage after Cold War fire. It's very significant difference. Next slide, please. Water treatment plant 2021 response. As I mentioned, debris flows and source water quality was impacted with the Cold War fire and debris flows. Reservoir A water treatment facility is just downstream of the Sly Park water treatment, Sly Park Lake. At the time when we were hit with the storms, waterbed of Sly Park Lake was exposed, very low level, and a lot of deposit came from tributaries also. High turbidity at the treatment facility was measured in the range from 100 to 130, 34 nephelometric units. That's extremely high. Excessive natural organics, total organic carbon, dissolved organic carbon, caused that chlorine demand, that is one of the primary chemicals that we use for oxidation and disinfection at the facility, was increased multiple times. A reaction between chlorine and natural organics creates disinfection byproducts. Chronic exposure to these chemicals is recognized by EPA as a cancerogen. And that is a reason why district needs to closely monitor what's going on in source water, to treatment processes and barriers, transmission distribution system, all the way to the last stop in a system. Okay, thank you. This is to visualize actually what was happening, and on left side we have turbidity that can be from natural organics or inorganics. Natural organics are usually from carbon nature, and total organic carbon can be strained, settled, a particulate one that has a weight. And on another side, we have dissolved organic carbon that can go through multiple treatment barriers and cause issues. In combination with chlorine, DOC creates disinfection byproducts. Next slide, please. Disinfection byproducts monitoring results. Main system has 8 compliance designated strategically located sites for monitoring. Compliance is calculated based on running annual average of last 4 quarters. 4th quarter in 2021 had significant increase in disinfection byproducts. We were monitoring for total trihalomethanes and helioacetic acids 5s. Major issue in this case that we have is actually HAA5, helioacetic acids. Disinfection byproducts data triggered a need to identify, measure how we're gonna mitigate these issues. Next slide, please. This chart was developed late December, early January, and it shows what was going on through treatment facility and distribution system. In October, you can see a huge spike. Sampling was done second week of November, and we hit 200 parts per billion. That's 3.5 times more than MCL for a single location. After storms, Sly Park Lake at the time was actually carrier of the demand because Reservoir 1 was offline. Sly Park Lake went in stabilization mode, and source water slowly started getting better. We did multiple samples on multiple locations through main system at that quarter, and we were able to mitigate problem and knock it down concentration of disinfection byproducts below maximum contaminant level. That's been district remain in compliance. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, what we gonna do? We experiencing first summer after colder fire and these big storms and enormous content of nutrients in our source water storages. It's really unclear how these storages will react. There is too many variables, from natural organics to content of the oxygen, temperature. All of that can affect and have negative adverse effects on source water quality. Staff and I personally reached some agencies that experienced similar conditions after fires, just to look for information what we can expect to this summer and next couple of years. And I didn't get clear information. On one side, some agency experienced issues for 3, 4, 5 years. On another side, some agencies didn't experience any issues after fire and storms. Talking about that amount of nutrition in source water, total organic carbon, natural organic matter, all of that can boost up algae growth in lakes. So far, we don't see indication that something like that is happening, but it's high possibility. Algae bloom can impair source water quality, especially when they start dying. That will cause chlorine demand to treatment processes and distribution transmission system to go up, to react with these organics and create disinfectant byproducts. Also, it can cause taste and odor issues throughout the system. Next slide, please. Having all of that in mind, we had two overall near-term approaches. One of them is to continue monitor trends in source water and finished water and prepare plan for execution if it's needed. Second approach is to implement changes in a treatment right now. A Reservoir A treatment facility is a direct treatment filtration plant. It's designed for extremely good source water that we historically have. It's not designed to treat excessive organic carbon through treatment barriers we have. These approaches that I mentioned, none of them is long-term approach. Long-term approach will call probably for additional treatment barriers at Reservoir A, and they can be very costly. Since we don't know how long problems with source water quality will exist, at this time it doesn't make sense to enter that kind of investment, even for me just to propose it. Next slide, please. Viable near-term solution is to replace media, anthracite media in existing filters at Reservoir A water treatment plant with granular activated carbon. Why? Granular activated carbon has ability to absorb total organic carbon. But GAC, granular activated carbon, comes with its own challenges. It's more expensive than anthracite, a regular media that we have at a reservoir treatment facility. Its effectiveness and absorption potential can go quickly down. It's not long term. And also reduces ability to remove manganese from source water and existing media is. It may be necessary on one point to go and replace one cluster, 4 filters from 12 at reservoir water treatment plant. Next slide, please. In order to come closer to implementation of these ideas, we contacted Department of Drinking Water, State Water Resource Control Board for approval and suggestions. And pretty much it was required to go through some kind of study, pilot study, in order to see does this new media can match performance of existing media regarding primary drinking water standards. Also, this study was conducted to quantify total organic carbon removal versus cost, assess potential issue of manganese removal through GAC media. Pilot study was conducted mid-March, mid-April, 4 weeks. It was kind of on fast track. We had 2 filters, one filter on pilot plant mimicking exact media what we have on our facility. That was anthracite over sand. Second filter that was running in parallel with this one was a GAC over sand, granular activated carbon over sand. Next slide, please. This is small facility that performed really well during pilot study. You can see 2 filters. One that is whitish is actually in backwash, and that's a reason why is color different. Generally, GAC and anthracite, they are all black. Next slide, please. This pilot treatment facility is 100% automated. It had communication with a consultant that was located down in Los Angeles. We collected data through 4 weeks. We chose to go with flow variation from 1.2 gallons per minute per square foot all the way to 5.2 gallons per square foot in minute. That actually matches maximum design flow through a reservoir water treatment plant. Here we have some performance parameters compared between GAC over sand and anthracite over sand. Filter head loss and runtime and turbidity profiles were identical. TOC removal from through GAC on the end with maximum flow of 5.2 gallons per square foot per minute is around 24-25%. Manganese removal from the same media dropped down to 30%. Anthracite removes it 100%. If district chooses to change 4 of 12 filters to GAC, manganese removal is expected 85 to 90%. That's mean 15 to 10% we will have reacting with chlorine after process, eventually precipitating in reservoirs and ending up in a distribution system. Disinfection byproduct levels will decrease 10 to 15%. Next slide, please. In 2022, we collected data for disinfection by products from compliant sites. And that data indicates district is in compliance. 3 sites are identified as a kind of, some kind of problem. There is possibility to have operational exceedance level on these sites. OEL doesn't mean that we are in violation. It's just indicator that we can have challenges to meet compliance in a third quarter. Data indicates that disinfection by products are forming also in El Dorado Hills area. Source water for El Dorado Hills area is Folsom Lake. Pilot study was conducted on source water at Sly Park Lake. GAC installation is not considered for El Dorado Hills water treatment plant. And district needs to enhance water age control to remain in compliance. Next slide, please. Here we have these 3 shaky sites, compliant sites. One is on High Crest in Cameron Park, south of Highway 50. That one is on the left side of the slide. On top is Lunaman, that is on north side of the district. And on the right side, Chateau Montalena, it's on the west-north side of the district, up close to Salmon Falls Beach. And you can see trends up to October 2021. We were in really good shape regarding control and removal and disinfection by products to our processes. Colder fire and rainstorms caused significant increase, but we remain in compliance 2021. First quarter in 2022, we pretty much got results that are 10 to 15% elevated than results in 2021 in first quarter. Second quarter, we got better results than first quarter. 47 on High Crest, on Lunaman, 43 on Chateau, we got 67. Okay.
Because of, I don't know how people online are reading this, and it might be a little difficult, but when we talk about these charts, these are the 3 areas of water being delivered. Is it Cameron Park is in the bottom? The one up on top is where?
It's Lunaman area, it's Rescue.
Okay, Rescue. Okay, so it's up towards, and then there's the Salmon Falls. All of them are receiving water from Sly Park?
2 of them.
2 of them,
See,
okay, which ones?
High Crest and Lunaman. Chateau Montalena is Folsom.
Is
Dorado
Folsom
Hills.
Lake.
Yes.
Okay, so that answered that question for me, but it also answers the question for those people who are watching this. Because I've seen online over and over of people talking about, specifically people in Serrano, talking about the taste of their water. And this can explain the turbidity, and this is an explanation of why it doesn't taste good and where their water comes from. So I'm looking forward to the next one, which says how long the water is in the pipe.
Okay.
Okay.
First, these are parameters that we're measuring in the system. You cannot smell, you cannot taste.
Right.
Taste and odor coming from different contaminants. It can come from algae, it can come from chlorine, it it can come because free and breakpoint chlorination is not complete. And usually people smells that when chlorine is on low side. But I will concentrate now to.
Okay, thank you.
We made projection. We were in compliance first quarter, we're gonna be in compliance second quarter. For third quarter, in a high crest area, we need to reach 40 parts per billion. That is not something that we cannot achieve because when we compare third quarter in 2021, we were below that level. For Lunaman area, we need to be in a range of 49 to be in compliance. And last year we were 23. It shouldn't be a big problem to achieve that, in my opinion. Chateau Montalina has to be at 58 parts per billion. And last year, Chateau Montalena was in range of 35. What I want to say, as much as our results on fourth quarter last year put us to think what's going to happen, slowly we managing water quality in our system and water age. Next slide, please. Recommended path forward. I mentioned enhanced water age control. Tank management and water quality flushing is necessary. Installation of the mixers in treated water storages on strategic location is needed. Additional auto flushers also located on strategic extremities of the distribution system needs to be installed. And that's the way how we're gonna control water age. Increased chlorine monitoring from application point on treatment facilities to the last point of distribution system is ongoing on a regular basis. Also, what we implemented is weekly operational sampling regarding disinfection by products to monitor what's going on through our distribution system, to get information what we additionally need to do on treatment facility to mitigate and manage disinfection byproducts in the system. And also prepare system for third quarter regulatory sampling that is on the schedule second week of August 2022. Next slide, please. Based on our third quarter data, we can make decision, is it a viable solution, granulated activated carbon installation or no? If we are in compliance, I think there is no need to pursue that avenue. Since fourth quarter on 2022 will be definitely better than fourth quarter in 2021. Cost of installation of GAC just on 4 filters can exceed $1 million. Since fourth quarter in 2021, we see improvement in source water quality and also in finished water quality throughout the system. District is still in compliance. Next slide, please. Questions?
Jenko, we talk about the age of water in the system. Now, in July and August and September, we move a lot of water. And so you were talking about mixers in the tanks and stuff like that. is that really something that we gotta be, I mean, we're moving a lot of water during those time periods, so.
Yes, but ratio, high peak, peak month high, and peak month low in district is probably 7-1 or even 10-1. What I want to say, in the summer, we're moving a lot of water, and water age is shrinking. We're getting better results. And that's the reason why my optimism going up. Over winter, everything is going down.
Okay.
And we have over almost 85 million gallons in storage capacity.
All right.
To deliver water from a reservoir A to Serrano sometimes can take 2 weeks.
And I've had a couple of people, or quite a few people queried why the odor, and the last time you made a presentation, I think we were talking about at Reservoir A, we were back flushing the filters every hour.
Yeah, that was,
Are we still doing that?
no, that
Okay.
was just during event of high turbidity
Okay.
and high organic load. At the time, treatment facility, Slide Park Reservoir A treatment
Yeah.
facility, couldn't be shut down. We had to make water. In order to make water, we had to go to multiple backflushes because head loads on the filters, because of the loading, going so quickly up and plugging up filters. Right now, pretty much water almost matching historical water quality. Beside turbidity and temperature and pH, we monitoring and UVA, ultraviolet absorption. That is a direct indicator regarding total organic carbon in water. It's a tool that help us to predict and how we gonna mitigate when it's going up. We decrease chlorine. We increase hydroxide feed to knock it down manganese. But for now, I think we have really good control of what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rudenko, I think in the county and our service area, we're very fortunate to have, under normal circumstances, really good quality water coming from our alpine reservoirs and through the treatment plants. And these unusual circumstances have created a huge challenge for you and your team, and hats off to the water group for keeping the water flowing with the challenges you had. Like Director Osborne mentioned, taking extreme action to backflush the filters on an hourly basis, and all the extraordinary efforts you made, because the alternative is just turn off the water. And in order to keep things flowing and keep our customers supplied with water, I think you made some extraordinary efforts. And the fact that the quality of the water isn't what we normally enjoy, I think you're taking steps to bring that back into compliance at the minimum cost to the customers. You know, we could build a new treatment plant or modify the treatment plant, as you pointed out, at a minimum of $1 million or so. And then by the time we got that project finished, the water quality would be back to what we're used to. So I just hats off to you and the team for making this happen. Yes, we have some people that say, gee, this doesn't taste as good as it normally does, but it'll get back there, and it still tastes way better than the water in LA or wherever. So thank you for you and your team for your efforts.
You're welcome. And Director Dwyer, if you don't mind, I would like to respond on your comment. First, a district is all the time in compliance. That's the one thing. Another thing, to improve facility. Right now, we are going through treatment facility assessment at Reservoir One and El Dorado Hills. That improvement can be hundreds, millions of dollars.
Yeah, the 1 million was just a temporary change out the GAC. The expansion of an additional filtration process that would be
Oh.
tens and tens of millions of dollars. But, Director Dwyer, thank you for the compliment to staff. Working through that high turbidity issue, failure was not an option. We had to do whatever we had to do to produce the water, and the guys and the teams just did an excellent job. So hats off to them. And then Rodenko's recommended path forward is, we may add some mixers and a few tanks on the outlying areas to turn over the water, a few auto flushers. We may get a couple customer calls saying, why are you flushing water in the drought? We'll manage those customer calls. And I know Nicole's staff going out there and sampling more and more samples to make sure we stay in compliance. They'll be part of the team as well. And I think his plan is excellent one, and we'll see what happens preparing for the third quarter and fourth quarter as well. So great job, Rodenko.
Thank you.
Don't go yet. I got a couple of comments. One, Director Dwyer beat me to it, but, I can't help in my mind on what I have to do to get nice filtered water out of my refrigerator. I got to change the filter, or if my pet wants to drink better water, I change the filter on that. Or when you want to breathe air, you change the filter on that. But when it comes to our water system for 63,000 people, this is a big filtering process. And I appreciate the fact that we're bringing this out, but when we do flushing, or if we do anything like that, just a little impacted customers in that area, a little notification. That was one of the things that I thought about is do you want to be notified? It's like PG&E. Do you want to be notified when the next power outage is going to happen? Set yourself up for a text message, and it works. And I don't know if we have that ability that we can, those people who want to sign up for a text message, if there's maintenance or something, that would be quick to let them know. And it might be something we can place out here on our have to, or maybe would be nice to let customers know, because the transparency to me is very important, instead of me seeing on people are going to complain about their food. I mean, it just happens, and then they have a social media that they're going to beef about this restaurant or that restaurant, but in this case, it was about our water system. And people who post that don't understand how the water system works. And again, that's the educational part that I think is really important, that people understand that. So I just want to put that in your mind, that people who log on and get their bill, I love getting my bill in an email, and if people sign up like they do for PG&E, get a notification if something's happening in their area. I don't know if that's possible, but it certainly would be on my list of things that we could do to keep people informed. So thank you very much. It's convoluted. A lot of people who are not chemists like me do understand the difference between chlorine and another alternative, but with a system like we've got, a distribution, we have to be so cautious and meet those regulations that are required. So I appreciate you being very good at that job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just
Yes.
your comments have brought a thought to my mind. It might also be possible that we write a one-time story about back flushing and filtering and stuff like that, which is something we do on an ongoing basis. Could put it in the newsletter, but more importantly, if you see somebody commenting about it, say you're back flushing a tank or something like that, and somebody comments on it, you can send them a link to that story and say, this is why, and maybe educate and squelch that, So, just an idea.
We'll work with Jesse to put something on the website, but.
We got a lot of ideas for you, Jesse, so.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Are there any comments from the public? Questions?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to comment on information item number 7.
Okay. So ends our information items on our agenda. Now we will move to action items. Item number 8.
Move it.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to approve item number 8 on finance.
Madam Chair, I will recuse myself from this item, please.
Okay, Director Veerkamp is recusing himself. Any members of the public want to make a comment?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 8, option 1, moved by Director Osborne, second by Director Dwyer, with Director Veerkamp recusing himself. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay,
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carried.
okay, we'll move to item number 9, Office of the General Manager, Ms. Leeper.
Good morning. Elizabeth Leeper, Senior Deputy General Counsel for the district. And here today I am presenting consideration of the proposed water transfer agreements. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation to guide this. I'm gonna wait for my PowerPoint. Thank you. Next slide, please. There is one relevant prior board action that I wanted to highlight, and this relates to one of the sources of supply for the proposed transfers that I'll be describing in more detail. But earlier this year, the board adopted a resolution declaring our intent to retain control of the water that is conserved as a result of the upper main ditch piping project. And this really documents that we retain control and ownership of this water as it's conserved, and we have the ability to transfer that source of supply. And so that was an important action by the board. Next slide, please. So I think a natural question is going to be, why are we proposing to transfer water while we're in a stage 1 water alert? And I will go into that in more detail, but currently we are maintaining the stage 1 water alert primarily for regulatory compliance purposes. So recently the State Water Resources Control Board adopted an emergency regulation that requires all water suppliers to basically have mandated conservation that aligns with a 10 to 20% conservation. For our particular drought action plan and water contingency plan, that aligns with the stage 1 water alert. So at this time, we have to maintain a stage 1 water alert to be in compliance with that emergency regulation. So we are maintaining that stage 1 water alert. The good news is that the district is very fortunate to have our own reservoirs. So we have our Project 184 reservoirs as well as our Jenkinson Lake supply. And those supplies, thanks to some good runoff that we're continuing to experience, are in good shape. So our particular supplies are more than sufficient to meet our customer demands in 2022. And it's for that reason that we are looking at a possible transfer. So first and foremost, we're always going to determine if we have sufficient supplies to meet our customer demands. Only when we're satisfied that the answer to that question is yes, then will we look to see if a proposed transfer is appropriate. And so we have determined that in this instance, we do have sufficient supplies. And so we are proposing to transfer 2 sources of supply. These sources are very distinct, and so they're being presented as 2 independent transfers with 2 corresponding transfer agreements because they are so unique and independent from one another. And so those 2 sources of supply are a Weber reservoir reoperation transfer. This may be familiar to those of you that are familiar with past transfers the district has conducted, where basically we're releasing water from storage to allow for the transfer. And so we're looking at a quantity of up to 750 acre-feet that might be available to transfer from Weber Reservoir. We have done similar transfers of the Weber Reservoir supply in the past. So that one is a bit familiar. New is the Upper Main Ditch Piping Project Conserved Water. So I'm happy to report that that new pipeline is now in operation. And so we are already experiencing the conserved water benefit of that piping project. As you may recall, this is a conversion from a previous earthen and unlined ditch. And that ditch was losing water through both evaporation and seepage through the earthen ditch. And so one of the primary objectives of that piping project was to conserve that water. And on average, that we've estimated that we conserve approximately 1,800 acre-feet of water per year through that piping project. And so that is the quantity that we're seeking to potentially transfer, is up to that 1,800 acre-feet of conserved water that is realized through the piping of that previous ditch. And so the action for your consideration today would be to approve 2 transfers, and those are water purchase and sale agreements. The proposed buyer is Westlands Water District. Westlands has bought water from the district in the past. And the 2 transfers together, as you can see, the quantities add up to 2,550 acre-feet potential maximum transfer amount, and I will emphasize potential. There's quite a few variables that will affect that ultimate quantity. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to highlight, I've touched on a few of these points, but I want to highlight we do have sufficient water supplies. And so I think for our customers, it may be a bit confusing. Why are we still asking for voluntary conservation while also suggesting that we have sufficient water to transfer? And as I highlighted, at this time, that stage 1 water alert really reflects an emergency regulation compliance requirement. So it's no longer reflective of our water supplies. It's really the state saying you must maintain this level of stage 1 water alert. But the good news is that the district is very fortunate to have our own reservoirs. We're, I think, in a much better position than a lot of other water suppliers due to the investments that the district has made in the past to secure our own reservoirs and our own supplies. And so our primary integrated drinking water system that is served off of the Project 184 facilities and Jenkinson Lake will have more than sufficient water in 2022. I did want to highlight that there are some satellite systems that unfortunately don't have the benefit of being connected to our primary drinking water system. And so those satellite systems may still experience limited supplies in 2022, such as what we saw in 2021 with Outingdale. And so we do have a couple systems that, you know, they're kind of on their own and they're dependent on those local supplies. They don't have the benefit of those larger reservoirs like our primary drinking water system. And I'll go into more detail about this, but part of these 2 sources of transfer water, what is important to note about these is absent the proposed transfer, these supplies are not anticipated to be consumed by district customers in 2022. So it's not that we're kind of taking water from our customers and suggesting that it be sold to someone else. We're saying that these supplies would not be used by our customers, and we think that that really enables us to do this transfer if it is the will of the board. And I'll go into more detail about that. Next slide, please. And so for the visually inclined, this just gives an indication of we do think we have more than adequate water to meet our primary drinking water system. And so what you'll see on these 3 graphics, moving from the left to the right, so the average supply that shows you kind of in a typical year what we would be looking at in terms of sources of supply, and you have the kind of stacked colors of various sources. And then we have basically the 2022 supply projections, as well as the relative projected 2022 demand projections. And then that 1,597 acre-feet number that you see at the top is essentially I'll call it surplus. I use that word cautiously, but That is the water beyond what we think we'll have in demands that we'll continue to have as supplies. And you'll see there's a very small green slice below that 15,970. That is the proposed transfer quantity. So I think it highlights two things. One, we are talking about a relatively minor amount of water relative to the district's total supplies for potential transfer. And even with the transfer, we anticipate having over 15,000 acre feet of additional supplies available to our customers if needed. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the two sources of supply that we're talking about as potential sources for the transfers, in part because these are so different. So I'll start with the conserved water transfer, which is associated with our upper main ditch piping project. As I mentioned, it was only recently that we completed piping of the project and that we have water running through the project. So we're now conserving the water that was previously lost through that earthen ditch. And importantly, there's a provision in the water code that specifically acknowledges that when entities such as the district take these types of conservation actions, that we still have ownership and control of that conserved water and that it's our asset available to us or available to transfer. So it's well recognized in the law that this is our water as conserved. As I mentioned, the average annual amount of conserved water based on prior analysis is 1,800 acre feet. That number is largely dependent on the amount of water that will now be moving through the pipe. So basically the concept is you look at flows that were previously in the ditch, you look at losses experienced at those flows in the ditch. Then you look at flows in the new pipe system and you essentially say, at those same flows, we would have lost 15% in the ditch. Well, now that 15% is conserved water that's available. And so as you can see from that calculation, the amount will be dependent on the actual amount flowing in the pipe. And then importantly, the calculation of conserved water is a calculation, it's a methodology. And because there are various entities involved in moving this water, such as the Bureau of Reclamation through the Bureau of Reclamation's facilities, ultimately we will need an entity like that to recognize and accept our proposed methodology and calculation of conserved water. So still some work to be done on getting recognition of that calculated amount.
Elizabeth, are we estimating based off past data, or are we actually measuring live the input and the output and then comparing that to past data?
So we will be measuring live, and then we'll be relying upon those prior experiences of losses at those flow levels, but we will be looking at real-time flows in the pipe system
Right.
to calculate the conserved water.
Yeah, and we have data that we would put water in the ditch and it would work its way down to the treatment plant, and we would know, how much we got there. So that's how we're using our calculations now.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it'll be kind of a lookup table. So say, I'm probably not going to do well with ops numbers, but say we had 100 CFS flowing in the pipe, and we say at 100 CFS in the ditch, we were losing 10%, right? And so now that 10 acre feet that would have previously been lost to the ditch is the conserved water available at that flow level. And so the vision for the transfer is we would be looking at real-time data to basically true up the estimated quantity. And I wanted to highlight that 2022 presents our first opportunity to transfer this conserved water. And so it does provide, I think, a valuable opportunity to establish a precedent that this water is available for transfer and to get recognition of this conserved water. So I think that's an important opportunity. And then somewhat unique to our system, so the way that this water previously moved through our system, we divert water at Kybers, and then it kind of has two routes it can take from there. It can go to meet consumptive demands, such as when it used to go through the ditch, or it can go to meet hydropower demands and then return to the American River. Essentially what we have now with the pipe system, so going back to my 100 CFS example, say in that one, we needed to put 100 CFS in the consumptive route to basically end up with 90 CFS after the losses. Now we're saying, well, we can move 90 CFS through the consumptive route, and that remaining 10 actually gets routed to hydro. So we get the benefit of that hydro water moving through hydro, but then it does return to the American River system, and it would not currently be available to us at Folsom Reservoir to divert, and so it's essentially lost to the district unless we get recognition for it as a transfer, or we are going to look to add this as a recognized source of supply at Folsom, but that will require a Warren Act contract amendment with the Bureau of Reclamation, so a homework item. But I wanted to just describe kind of the fate and route of this water. So thank you for indulging that detail. Moving on to the Weber Reservoir source. So as I mentioned, this has already been a source of prior transfers. So this is a familiar transfer to regulatory entities. It's a familiar transfer to Bureau of Reclamation, and perhaps has an easier road ahead for itself if we choose to pursue it. Importantly, Weber Reservoir is basically undersized for its watershed, and so it's really an annual fill reservoir. And so what does that really mean for us? It means that if we release this water for transfer, we would anticipate that that reservoir recoups that water, and we're essentially back in the same position next year. So it's kind of a one-year look at that supply, and we don't think that the debt, so to speak, in that reservoir that corresponds to the transfer quantity, we're not going to carry that forward into the next year. We'll basically recoup storage. And so that's an important thing to highlight. Weber Reservoir is a supply that we can divert at Folsom Reservoir. It is one of our sources under the Warren Act contract, but for this year, we are planning on relying upon another source of supply at Folsom Reservoir, which is permit 2112. And so we wouldn't anticipate using Weber Reservoir in 2022 at Folsom, even absent the transfer. We would rely upon another source of supply. And so for that reason, we're not anticipating that Weber Reservoir water is needed to meet our customer demands this year. And therefore, we believe it's an available source for transfer. So any questions before I move on? I know that was quite a bit of detail. Next slide, please. So moving on to the proposed terms and pricing for these two transfers. As I mentioned, we are pursuing these as two separate purchase and sale agreements because of the independent sources of these supplies. But the terms you'll see are nearly identical across the two agreements. So, of course, perhaps the most interesting, the purchase price, which is $800 per acre foot. And then that price actually gets broken out into a series of payments if we proceed with the transfer. So importantly, there is an option payment. This is a non-refundable payment to the district of $25 per acre foot, and that really allows the proposed buyer, Westlands, to essentially say, we want the opportunity to buy this water before anyone else does. And so they're securing that option through a non-refundable option payment. The district retains that option payment regardless of whether we actually can achieve the transfer. So that's an important term for the district. And then the next payment is going to be the call payment. And that's when Westland says, this is the specific quantity that we want to purchase. We would anticipate that they would want all of the water that we can make available to them. But that is essentially when they say, yes, we want the water, and that's $100 per acre foot. And then the remainder of the payment, which equates to that $675 per acre foot, that final payment amount will be when the water is actually delivered to us to Folsom Reservoir. And our obligations end at Folsom Reservoir. So we have to get the water to Folsom Reservoir. The buyer, Westlands, is then responsible for arranging for the further conveyance through the Bureau of Reclamation facilities and ultimately to Westlands service area. And so if we get it to Folsom Reservoir, we have an entitlement to get paid for that water. In general, each party would bear their own administrative costs for preparing for the transfer, with a caveat that Westlands is willing to reimburse the district up to $25,000 in actual administrative costs that we incur. So for example, if we need to rely on a consultant to perform the CEQA analysis, then Westlands would reimburse us for those costs up to that amount. As I referenced, there are some regulatory approvals that are necessary to accomplish this transfer, which is pretty much always the case. Those approvals are a little different between these two supplies, and that largely depends on the fact that we're talking about a post-1914 water right with Weber Reservoir, which is subject to the jurisdiction of the State Water Board. In contrast, the water right for the conserved water is a pre-1914 water right, and so it will not go before the State Water Resources Control Board. But both of these sources, because we're looking to move them through Bureau of Reclamation facilities, will require a review and approval by the Bureau of Reclamation. And I wanted to highlight that, as I hopefully made clear, we don't believe these supplies are necessary to meet district customer demands. However, it's very clear in these proposed agreements that if for any reason the district determines that we do need the supplies for our customer demands, we can cancel or reduce the transfer at any time. So our customers will always have priority even if we were to proceed with the transfer. And then I'm wrapping up. So environmental review, as you're well aware, any proposed project by the district is subject to CEQA compliance for environmental review. As I mentioned, these two sources, because of the nature of the underlying water rights, they actually have two different CEQA paths as well. So Weber Reservoir, because it will go in front of the State Water Board, there's actually a CEQA exemption for transfers that are subject to State Water Board approval. And so that will be, we would propose a notice of exemption to satisfy CEQA for that particular transfer. In contrast, the conserved water does not have a CEQA exemption. So we're anticipating that we would prepare an initial study and then bring that back to the board for consideration. And the agreements are conditioned upon satisfying and complying with CEQA. So that would be the environmental review compliance. And next slide. So to wrap up, these are the board options. Option 1 is to approve the 2022 temporary water purchase agreements with Westlands Water District and authorize the general manager to execute the agreements and any related documents necessary to complete the transfers. And the staff's recommendation is to proceed with option 1.
I'll move option 1.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Veerkamp to authorize this action. Questions? Yes, I'm going to.
Then I got a couple.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I don't know if you have the ability to go to the AIS
Yes.
page 4. No, I have to go back to it, but
I have it.
so there's a, and I'm thinking this might be left over from, former Director Coco had his brainchild to create the special private directors fund, whatever we want to call it. We got rid of that. And, but it says, it talks about, it's the third paragraph, page 4, that what this money from the revenue from this money, what would be used for, which could be to retire debt or pay-go, used for pay-go projects or other things. And then it says, but based off past board direction that it's going to be used for the OPEB obligations, which we could do. But I would like to see it not be a default thing. I'd like to see it brought back to the board once and if this happens, that then the board could discuss, you know, that might be the best and highest use. It might be paying off some bonds, but I'd like for us to be able to discuss it and consider alternatives.
Yes, thank you. And I think staff was aware that that had been an item of discussion in the past. So this was largely, I think, to invite discussion from the board. So thank you for that.
Okay, Director Veerkamp.
Route of delivery is Weber Creek and South Fork American River probably to Folsom.
Sorry.
The route of delivery of the water, South Fork American River and Weber Creek, most likely.
Yes.
Okay, just thinking of the benefit to those watersheds as the water goes down that way as well. Not that it really matters, but what's Westland's intended to utilize the water for? Is it
I don't
environmental,
have a lot of detail. Westlands is a agricultural water district, and much of their crops, I believe, are in permanent orchards, which is why they have a critical need for water, particularly in drought times, because they don't, as a permanent, almond orchard, they don't really have the flexibility to fallow orchards, and so my understanding it would go to those agricultural needs, and largely permanent crops would be my understanding.
So that,
Okay.
to me, that's why I firmly support this, not only the revenue potential, but the findings of fact are there, as well as the ag support that we desperately need in this state, so. And obviously, if we were in the same boat, would want somebody to transfer some water to us, given the complexity of our water system, so. Thank you for that. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
Director Dwyer.
Thank you, Director Anzini. Yes, I'd like to echo Director Day's observation and concern about what do we do with this, I'll call it windfall, but what do we do with the money we earn by selling our surplus water while trying to explain the conservation efforts and the sale of water in the same breath to our constituents. And I think it's really important that staff consider taking the revenue that we generate by this and help offset some of our operating costs in terms of increased fuel costs, increased energy costs, to try to insulate the ratepayers from these increases as much as we can. So I think that would be a very beneficial use of this revenue when it comes about. The other thing I think that's important to approve this sale is we're really pushing the test button on our ability to transfer conserved water. And so I think it's a precedent, as you said, that we really need to test, and now is the time to do it, because if we're successful, then we can take conserved water in the future years, and this would set a precedent for another income stream downstream, if you will. So I think it's a very important thing for us to pursue this. Thanks.
Yeah, did you have a comment, Director Osborne?
Well, to answer the question, I just happened to be at a memorial service Saturday in San Luis Obispo, and sitting next to me was a rancher who said that Westlands would use the water, if they had water available, it would be to maintain the trees. They couldn't grow crops on $800 water. I didn't tell them the price, but I said, anyway, because I didn't even know this was on the agenda until I got back. But I do have a conundrum. As I was mentioning, I was at CDEP, and quite a few people asked about water transfers. And I said, well, I don't know that the board were on, because I didn't know that it was on the agenda at the time. But I said, I would have a problem with selling water when our main reservoir is at 80% and dropping. It was at 82%, now it's at 80%. And in all of these refill contracts and all of this stuff, and conserved water and everything else is understandable by this board, but not to the general public when we're trying to sell water when our main reservoir isn't full. And and I danced around it as best I could, but everybody there said, please don't sell the water. And this was the consensus of this whole big bunch of people. And then I go back and said, now I go back to when we sold the water to Westlands originally, Sly Park was full. The original, I think, was in 2015. I think our reservoirs were all full, and it was easy to explain it, you know. And we had all this excess water, and our reservoirs are full, no big problem. But to explain to people we're selling water when our main reservoir isn't at capacity, and then also, we try to keep 25,000 acre feet in Sly Park for next year. That's our goal, carryover for the next year. And based on what Dan Corcoran told us about La Nina, the possibility that maybe we're going to have another dry year, I just have, this is a conundrum to me, because I can understand we could do it and wouldn't impact it. But I think publicly, it's difficult to tell people you've got to conserve water because we're going to sell it. And I guess I just, in my own mind, I can't support it. You know, I would like, if we could wait 45 days or so, and I know that puts a crunch on the processes, the Bureau of Reclamation and all the other traps that we have to go through to get through to see how all these supplies are. But again, this is a real conundrum to me, and because I represent a lot of the people that live around that lake, and you know, they say, why in the hell are we selling water when we can't even fill our own reservoir? So, and I tried to explain them. All of our upper reservoirs are at capacity, spilling or will spill. But we can't use Silver Lake until September 15th by agreement with Amador County. We try to hold cables as long as we can because the power prices go up in December. And so basically Echo and Aloha won't keep we can't run the power plant and keep Sly Park at 80%. So all of these things, I tried to dance around at this thing, and everybody just said, please don't sell water. So that's what I'm at.
Thank you. Just to make it clear for the record, so with or without the transfer, there will be no change in Jenkinson's storage?
I understand that, but you try to tell the people, the average person that, and it doesn't ring right.
So I'd like to make a point, and I think it's really important. And this is a conundrum for all of us. And I think the offset that we haven't seen here for the people to understand is how much income would come in, possibly, to our budgets to help offset this. And I think it's really important that the people who are most concerned, what would be their benefit? Their benefit would be a reduced bill because they have been conserving. To me, the ultimate is in the pocket of savings from their own water bills that are continually going up. Now, granted, this board approved rate increases in, when we do that, 2020? 2 years ago, and we went through the proposition required workshops and everything. In the end, this board approved so many incremental increases. My question, and this is the way I see it, because as Director Osborne says, when I go and I talk to people, they always ask, how is our water? You know, where are we at? Now, there's other things that we need to compare as board members and talk to other water agencies. And when we were at the Aqua legislative days, we had an opportunity to meet board members from Westland. And I've always heard this thing about Westlands, but it was not what I expected. I was educated because Westlands is totally an agricultural water agency. They serve the needs of large farms that are right now in dire need. To my local ratepayers or the people who I represent, they don't care. Unless they're educated in the fact that those agricultural areas will bring them food. So it's a basic concept of understanding where California is with water, and quite frankly, if we compared to the southern part, like Calaveras and Amador, not Amador, but Calaveras and Tuolumne, they have not received as much rain as we did. Talk about Shasta. They have not received as much rain. They are much lower than we are. So we as water representatives, what's best for our own ratepayers? And that's a conundrum for me. I would love to get that money and draw down people's bills. But and I know an engineer is going to want to take that money and put it in a project improvement, which also reduces the amount of general obligation bonds. So there's always a weighty decision as an individual, but my own preferences, I understand what Westlands uses. I'm totally understanding why it's important that all water agencies group together and work out the demands. But when there's this territorial belief that our water is our water, it doesn't belong to anybody else, I have a problem with that too, because resources must be shared. And, that is my dilemma, but I don't think it's the same as any of the other board members. But ultimately, it's great for California that we can help each other out. And I'm not sure I'm there. Yes. Yes, I'm through pontificating. So, Director Day.
Yeah, well, actually, this is really good dialogue, very interesting, the different perspectives. Yeah, I'm not so sure this is going to pass now. I don't know, but I think it will. I hope it will. I do think, George, to your concerns, and I think Elizabeth spoke to it, it materially would not make a significant difference at Sly Park. And and the water otherwise is just lost, and we lose the opportunity to generate revenue and help other people in our state. And $800 an acre foot is a really high amount. It's a very good price. We've done this a few times, and this is I think the best price we've ever gotten. In the past, the knock on Westlands, I think they're so big, they're pretty powerful, and they maybe sometimes use their muscle. It pissed people off. There's some knock on almonds because almond trees are used a high amount of water. As far as total food production is concerned, it's a high water user. But nevertheless, they're there, they're planted, and if we can keep some trees alive, that's good. But to me, the bottom line is this is just really a terrific opportunity. It's water that our customers would not use, and we can make hopefully a couple $1 million off of it. And then I'll reiterate, because you've talked about, can we shave a little bit off the rate increase? Can we do something to buffer some of the inflation shock? Those are terrific ideas, and so that's where I think I'd like to see it brought back, and we discuss all those ideas and figure out the best and highest use if we pass this and if we consummate the sale. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just two pieces of information. Placer County Water Agency is doing the transfer with East Bay Mud as we speak. Sacramento, I can't remember the number. It was a 10,000 acre feet of groundwater, I think, being transferred as well, because there is such a need, and they're going to, not groundwater, they're transferring their surface water rights and going to groundwater. So a lot of the rural areas are doing this, and I think they're doing it because they have an adequate water supply, and I think Elizabeth did a great job, along with Dan Corcoran, showing that we do have the supply, and if we don't do it, it's just going to go down the river, and our ratepayers don't get any benefit. And I do like the idea of reporting back if this transfer is successful and approved by the board, bringing back to the board what type of revenue we're talking about, and then the board can decide, is it going to cover the inflationary components that we're seeing or not? So I'll plan, if it passes, to bring that back to the board for consideration.
Great. So any comments from the public?
For this item, I'll just repeat it. If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 9, option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Veerkamp. I believe we are ready for the vote. Division 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Division 1 voting no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And I just want to reiterate that this is going to come back if there's a contractual assignment that's happening.
Yeah, I'll bring back.
It's not final.
The board is authorizing me to enter into those contracts.
Yes.
And I will do that. What I'll bring back is if the transfer actually takes place and there's revenue generated from these contracts, bring that revenue amount back to the board for the board to give direction on where they want to use those funds.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 10.
Move 1.
Good morning, board.
Well, there's a motion already and a second. There's a motion from Director Osborne and a second from Director Day that they move forward, that we vote on this. Thank you for being prepared. Great presentation. For those who want to do the presentation after we close the board meeting, well, I mean, you could stay at the podium if you want. Okay, thank you. Okay.
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda and every agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 10, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Day. I believe we are ready for a vote.
And this is for a big wood chipper. Thanks.
Well, being a real supporter of this veg management and fire protection reduction issue, I think irrespective of a great presentation by Rudinko, I think we need to get this done.
Slideshow to be on the website soon.
No, the slideshow's already there.
Oh,
as
okay,
part of the board
good.
packet.
It's
So,
there.
because I am so cautious, I'm going to reset the vote because I think there was somebody that had a button pushed, and I just want to, I don't want anybody to accidentally vote wrong. So we're voting right now on action item number 10, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Day.
Thank you. Now we vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right. This ends the bottom part, the rest of our agenda. Are there any comments from the board?
I have a request to staff. I think I talked about it last year in that and I think it was Elizabeth and Brian maybe were looking at it. Do we know what the status of that in the little portion of Sacramento County that we have where 500 new homes are going to be built in Folsom, but we're going to be providing hookups for those homes? Do we know what the status of those are? Have they started building those? So much activity down there. And then what I had requested before was maybe a one-page white paper, and that area is no longer in my district. And I was trying to look it up. I don't recall, is it going to be in yours? So I'm going to pass the baton to you because you're going to, you're going to hear from those folks because my suggestion was a one-page white paper that the developer that we would request or require that the developer give to buyers of homes there, so they know going in, eyes wide open, that EID is going to service them, because they're going to be paying our current rates plus 50%, because we don't get any property tax revenue from them. So they're going to have some shock. And so that's where I think we need to preemptorily create a one-page thing to explain why and how this comes about, why the fees are such that they are. And hopefully they get it while they're buying, so they know going in, because we will hear from them, and you especially will hear from them. So
And, yeah, definitely we'll hear from the people over in the Heritage area.
yeah. So I just, maybe if we could bring that back in the next meeting or the meeting after that, what's happening there, and if we can put together that white paper, one-page thing, I think it would help EID and help Director Anzini.
We'll
Thank
bring
you.
it back, but I believe Brian Polson's working with Mike Brink to have a disclosure statement in all the sales of the homes there.
Excellent.
And we've been working with the city of Folsom. There's some will be city of Folsom wastewater customers and the rest ours. So we'll bring it back and describe to the board how we're going to manage that in cooperation with the city of Folsom.
So we will be giving them water, but the flushing will be taken care of by Folsom, right?
Not exactly, and again, it's not on the agenda. About 130 customers will be gravity fed in the city of Folsom. The rest will be our wastewater customers. And all of those customers are water customers. But we'll bring back a map in detail at the next board
Perfect.
meeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Director Day, for bringing that up. It's a heads up. Anything else? All right, so we'll adjourn this meeting.